Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteus and you're watching The World Report. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines for this hour. President Trump urges neighbouring companies to just clean out Gaza by accepting more Palestinian refugees. He also reserves Biden's pause on heavy bomb deliveries, raising concerns about escalating regional tensions. Citing a breach by Hamas, Israel halts plans for the ceasefire and continues its military presence near Lebanon. Both Lebanese leadership and France's president have condemned the escalation, calling for a swift de-escalation. Offering to help settle the war, Trump announces he has spoken with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and intends to speak with Russian President Putin soon. Observers remain cautious about his potential influence on ongoing peace efforts. Pyongyang says its newly tested cruise missile system is a show of force against American provocations. The international community watches closely, fearing increased instability in the region. In a fresh development, US President Donald Trump has announced plans to speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin, aiming to settle the war in Ukraine. Trump claimed both sides want an end to the conflict and highlighted his intentions to negotiate. Trump has repeatedly stated that the war would not have started under his watch. Russian President Putin, on his part, said Russia is open to talks with the US on broader issues and praised Trump as a pragmatic. However, he criticised Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy for ruling out negotiations in 2022. Zelenskyy has now reiterated that any deal must include Kiev, but warned that Putin may lack genuine interest in ending the conflict. We will now discuss more on this topic. Joining me is Dr. Sergei Dvoryanov, Director Communications of BRICS Culture Media Forum, live from Moscow, Russia, and Professor Oleksiy Haran, Professor of Comparative Politics at the University of Kiev, Moldova. Thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Dvoryanov, I wanted to come to you on this first question. Do you think Trump's involvement really could end this conflict?
I hope so. Of course, it's not only our hope, it's a hope of all humanity, of all of the world. But come again to the inauguration ceremony of Donald Trump. How many times he repeat what God, and how many times he repeat what America in his speech. I believe that it's only one formula of peace, which described in the Asian spiritual scripture Bhagavad Gita, which belong to Vedic culture. Formula of peace is serving to God. That's why we can expect, if Donald Trump really wants to bring peace into the human society, modern human society, he should make it on scientific level. And when he will come to Moscow, he should bring with his delegation some real spiritual leaders and philosophers as well, who can pray together in our Red Square in Moscow for the peace in future of all humanity. Because I believe it's only one formula of freedom as well. Freedom is coexistence and codependence. We depend from each other. That's why when a famous American singer prepare some song, where the world was the children, means where the children of God, we should put this agenda as a peacemaking dialogue. And come again to your show. Last time I discussed with my Ukrainian colleague about the historical facts. When I mentioned some historical facts, he called me that I'm a liar. But I smile and I pray to his spiritual benefits. If we will start with peacemaking dialogue, even in your platform, in your show, with respect to each other, when we can feel dependence of each other. That is formula of freedom and formula of peace.
Professor Haran, I want to bring you into this next one. This may be stating the obvious, but why is it so important that Kiev be included in any peace talks?
Why? Because I think it's natural. The answer is natural because this is war for our freedom and for our very existence. So I think we should be included there, definitely. You know, great powers cannot decide for ourselves. So if we are talking practically regarding this potential talks between Trump and Putin, I think Ukraine say will not participate directly in this meeting when it happens, if it happens, but definitely our words should be heard by US, by other allies, so to take Ukrainian position into consideration. And this is a question actually about what Trump will do, because, you know, he declares his intention to stop the war. Very good. He said Zelenskyy is ready for that. He didn't mention that Putin is ready for that, so he's going to pressure Putin. But he's saying that I would like to reach an agreement. So the question here is what kind of agreement? This is very, very important. So if Dr. Dvoryanov, I will not call him a colleague because he's a typical, you know, Russian propagandist, is saying about historic facts. Historic facts are the facts that you attacked non-nuclear and neutral Ukraine. These are historic facts.
Okay.
You know, okay, and talking about God, I think it's very important. It's not for Russia to talk about God because their church is supporting the war very, very clearly. They are killing believers in Ukraine, Orthodox believers. They are destroying the temples in Ukraine. So this is a church which is blessing the war.
I want to ask you both the same question in this respectful conversation. How do you both respond to Zelensky's concern that Putin may not be genuinely interested in peace? Dr. Dvoryanov, could you go first on this one, please?
First of all, I'm highly appreciate for the Professor Alexei that he mentioned in his speech some words which I already mentioned, like existence. For example, come to the famous movement Black Lives Matter, American natives lives matter, Ukrainian lives matter, Russian lives matter. That again is formula coexistence, codependence. That's why we start to respect each other. And I respect speech of Professor Alexei. That's a practical step to peacemaking dialogue. We already improved that we can do it together right now in your show. And practically speaking, of course, Mr. Zelenskyy, come again, I also cannot call him president because he was not re-elected. He has some problems with his legacy, like his colleague, president of South Korea. That's why I can see that he is in trouble time right now. He has a lot of challengers inside country, outside country, because before his election he promised that he will bring peace to Ukraine, but he bring war actually. That's why he's in trouble time. We should support his on the spiritual level. We should pray together. We should add it to the delegation of peacemaking dialogue some philosophers and religious spiritual leaders. That is most important.
Professor
and some scientists.
Professor Haran,
Yeah.
I want to get to your response to that. And how do you respond to Zelensky's concern that Putin does not want this war to end?
You see, it's very difficult to have a discussion because of theses which are made by Mr. Dvoryanov and which are actually Kremlin thesis, propaganda. So why do you kill Ukrainians, Mr. Dvoryanov? You're talking about peace. You are killing, don't smile please, you are killing Ukrainians every day, civilians. I would like to stress it. So if you are talking Zelenskyy, again, he's totally legitimate. according to our constitution, unfortunately, we don't have possibility to make re-elections during the war because Russia attacked Ukraine. And Russia is teaching us democracy. Come on, you have a dictatorship. We have elected president, not yours. So this is, really a bluff when Russia is trying to teach others a democracy. We know what Russia's system is. And well, regarding your question, yes, we think that Putin doesn't want peace, definitely. Because he is saying that he would like to annex 4 Ukrainian oblasts, regions, even 5, I would say. So that's his policy. How peace can be built on that? If, superpower, nuclear, so-called superpower, because actually you have no other arguments than, nuclear blackmail. If this attacks independent country and seizes its land, at this point, 20% of Ukrainian territory.
Can I get your response to this, Dr. Dvoryanov? And I also want to ask, is Russia prepared to make concessions for a peace deal?
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, when my brother from Ukraine, Professor
I'm not
Alexei...
your brother. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
Can we keep this conversation respectful, please, and let each other speak when?
Okay, yes, I will respond. When he can see smile on my face, he cannot see tears inside my heart. I'm a religious philosopher. That's why I can see, come again to the Vedic scripture. In Vedic scriptures very clearly explain when somebody blame, for example, neighbor, ruler of the country, king, anybody, actually he blame God himself. Why? Because I believe to karma, I believe to some spiritual law which exist in our even material existence. That's why we should put this topic of peacemaking dialogue on very scientific level, not just put some very aggressive words to each other.
Professor Haran, please, can you respond to this? And what are your thoughts on US involvement in this war? And some final thoughts, please.
Yes, and finally, I that we have 3 main conditions. It's the basis, it's a platform, it's a principles where we can start with this peacemaking dialogue. First conditions that Russian lands and the Russian population, which already chose to join to Russia, should be a part of our civilization. It's already written in our constitution. Second, no any Nazi movement should be exist inside Russia because it's a shame for all humanity. And the last point, we should prepare some law that Ukraine never will join to NATO. That's all. As simple as this.
Professor Haran, please, just one quick last statement as we are running out of time.
In God, but I think that it's important if Russia wants peace, stop the war and withdraw from the occupied territory. God didn't bless you to occupy another country, to attack another country. Basically, what Mr. Dvoryanov is saying now is that Russia would like to annex Ukrainian territories. It's not according to the God's will. It's against international law. It's against international law. And finally, about future security for Ukraine, Russia attacks neutral states. Neutral. Let me remind to you, Mr. Dvoryanov, that in 2014, Ukraine was a neutral state. And you attacked it. So, and you are talking about peace, about God's will? No, it's against God's will.
Thank you very much, both guests, Dr. Dvoryanov and Professor Haran, for joining us in that conversation. We will now move on to some more news updates from across the world. Brazil has strongly condemned the United States after dozens of deportees arrived in the country in handcuffs. The plane was carrying 88 Brazilian passengers, 16 security agents and 8 crew members, as per reports. The deportation flight was not directly linked to any immigration orders issued by Trump upon taking office on Monday, but rather stemmed from a 2017 bilateral agreement. Meanwhile, tensions over US deportation continue in Mexico. In the latest update, Mexico has refused a request from President Donald Trump's administration to allow a US military aircraft deporting migrants to land in the country, as per official reports. What's next in the ongoing deportation issues? Watch in this report.
Brazil's government expressed outrage on Saturday after dozens of immigrants deported from the United States arrived by plane in handcuffs, calling it a flagrant disregard for their rights. The spat comes as Latin America grapples with US President Donald Trump's return to power with a hardline anti-immigration agenda, promising crackdowns on irregular migration and mass deportations. When the plane landed in the northern city of Manaus, Brazilian authorities ordered US officials to immediately remove the handcuffs, the Justice Ministry said in a statement. As per reports, the deportation flight was not directly linked to any immigration orders issued by Trump upon taking office Monday, but rather stemmed from a 2017 bilateral agreement. Trump promised a crackdown on illegal immigration during the election campaign and began his second term with a flurry of executive actions aimed at overhauling entry to the United States. A statement from Brazil's federal police said the plane arrived Friday night with 88 Brazilians on board, but the government of Amazonas state, of which Manaus is the capital, said there were 79 passengers, 62 men, 11 women, and 6 children. The use of handcuffs on migrants is considered controversial in Brazil. Even former conservative Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, a Trump supporter, has called for an end to the practice. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from across the Indo-Pacific region. 2 historic statues were damaged in Melbourne before Australia celebrations on Sunday. Tens of thousands of people across the country have joined protests in support of Aboriginal groups. These groups argue that the date is not one to celebrate. A statue of colonialist John Batman has been sawn in half. He is the founder of the country's second largest city. President Donald Trump's foreign aid pause has forced a suspension of flights for more than 40,000 Afghans approved for special US visas. These individuals are at risk of Taliban retribution, according to a leading advocate and a US official. South Koreans have been repurposing flower wreaths and K-pop light sticks as a political protest tools amid the nation's deepening political crisis. Hundreds of wreaths, predominantly directed at Yoon himself, have been sent to his residence connected to the impeachment proceedings. Some of the wreaths are also targeting other officials involved in the martial law controversy. Colourful tableau fighter jet transformations and motorbike stunts by Army daredevils have marked India's Republic Day celebrations in New Delhi. The event commemorates the day the nation's secular constitution came into effect in 1950. Thousands have gathered in the capital to watch the parade from seats around Kartavaya Path. They have cheered the march by troops from India's defence forces and dance performances. The CIA on Saturday offered a new assessment on the origin of the COVID outbreak. It stated that the coronavirus is more likely to have leaked from a Chinese lab than to come from animals. However, the intelligence agency has cautioned that it has low confidence in this determination. Donald Trump has pardoned 23 anti-abortion activists convicted of blocking clinic entrances, sparking criticism from abortion rights advocates. This controversial move occurred just before the annual March for Life rally. Here is a full report about what has happened so far.
At a rally in Washington, Trump pledged support for the anti-abortion movement and claimed credit for overturning Roe v. Wade. He stated he would stand proudly for families and life, while reiterating that Democrats want to expand abortion access. President Trump pardoned 23 anti-abortion activists convicted of blockading a clinic. Calling it a great honor, he stated they should not have been prosecuted. noting many were elderly. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the U.S. is rejoining the Geneva Consensus Declaration, which critics argue limits abortion access. This move follows the Supreme Court's 2022 ruling that eliminated the nationwide right to abortion. Anti-abortion activists criticized Trump for not supporting a national abortion ban, despite pardoning 23 activists convicted of blocking clinic access. Coleman Boyd, one of the pardoned, called Trump misguided and urged him to advocate for a federal ban. This event was controversial due to the presence of neo-Nazi group Patriot Front, sparking debates about Trump's connections to extremist groups. Pardon sparked debate over abortion rights. Critics claim Trump undermines FACE Act. Supporters see victory for pro-life activism. Trump's actions have sparked a debate on gender equality and women's health. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now take a look at some more news updates from North America. Rain fell in Southern California, aiding firefighters battling wildfires. But charred hills face toxic ash runoff risks. LA issued flood warnings and cleanup orders. Crews reinforced slopes, cleared drains, and filled sandbags. Toxic ash from burnout materials poses health risk. More rain and snow are forecast through Tuesday. A private investigator in New Mexico pleaded guilty to racketeering and bribery. He bribed officers since 2008 to dismiss DWI cases. Clients paid cash retainers used to pay officers. Over a dozen police officers resigned or were terminated. The probe revealed systemic corruption in DWI cases. Prosecutors recommend a reduced sentence. A Florida man was arrested for threatening Trump online. Shannon Atkins, 46, was stopped in West Palm Beach. He also faces drug charges after cocaine was found. Atkins lives near Trump's Mar-a-Lago but made no approach. FBI and Secret Service are investigating further. He remains held without bond. Darren Osborne hid 4 bodies for his son. The victims were killed after a night of drinking in 2021. Bodies were left in a car in a cornfield. His son, Anthony Suggs, was sentenced to 103 years. Osborne will serve sentences concurrently. The case involved self-representation at sentencing. Rose Byrne stars in If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. The film premiered at Sundance, wowing audiences. Byrne plays a mother on the edge dealing with crisis. Conan O'Brien and Aesop Rocky also star in it. Director Mary Bronstein crafts an intense, surreal story. In the movie is an early festival favourite. The Philippines has made fresh accusations on China, claiming that its Coast Guard vessels harassed its fishery vessels. Owing to this, Philippines has cancelled its operation in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. It comes after US State Secretary Marco Rubio criticised aggressive Chinese actions in the waters. Here is a detailed report.
The Philippines has suspended a scientific survey in the South China Sea after facing aggressive behavior from China's Coast Guard and Navy. 2 Philippine fisheries vessels were on their way to collect sand samples from Sandy Cay near Philippine-occupied Thichu Island. There they encountered aggressive maneuvers from 3 China Coast Guard ships. The Philippine Coast Guard blamed Chinese naval forces for deploying 4 small boats from its Coast Guard vessels to harass. 2 inflatable boats deployed by the Fisheries Bureau to transport personnel to Sandy Cay. A Chinese Navy helicopter also hovered at an unsafe altitude over the watercraft, it said. In its statement, China Coast Guard said China has indisputable sovereignty over the Spratly Islands. It added that it had intercepted 2 Philippine vessels and driven them away in accordance with the law. China Coast Guard also said the Philippine vessels had entered waters without permission and attempted to illegally land on the reef to collect sand samples. Recently, new U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had discussed China's dangerous and destabilizing actions in the South China Sea with his Philippine counterpart. He also underscored the ironclad U.S. defense commitment to Manila in a conversation over a call with Foreign Minister Enrique Manalo. Manila and Beijing have had a series of escalating confrontations in disputed waters of the South China Sea. China claims almost all the strategic waterway. Bureau Report, NewsX.
And that is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.